The extraordinary tale of a forgotten Japanese temple that would captivate archaeologists and history enthusiasts from across the globe. A concealed samurai dynasty treasure that remained undiscovered for over 7 centuries. All because of one woman's unwavering courage to forge a better future for her daughter amid devastating personal loss and the ancient teahouse that contained a hidden chamber, housing what scholars would later call the most significant feudal Japan discovery in modern history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn leaves danced on gentle breezes as Naomi Tanaka guided her weathered car through the narrow streets of Mizuho, a picturesque mountain village nestled in Japan's countryside. At 32, the single mother of a 10-year-old daughter had received an unexpected letter just weeks earlier, informing her that a great-aunt she had met only once had bequeathed her family's traditional tea house and all associated properties in this remote village, nearly 3 hours from her modest apartment in Tokyo. "Is that it?" asked 10-year-old Hana, pointing through the rain-speckled window at an elegant but clearly aging wooden structure with a sign reading Tanaka Tea House and Antiquities. "That's what the attorney said." 27 Mountain Blossom Road, Naomi confirmed, trying to mask her disappointment. She had hoped this unexpected inheritance might somehow alleviate their financial struggles after losing her position at a prestigious publishing company during recent corporate restructuring. Between mounting credit card debt, university loans, and the constant challenge of providing for Hana as a single parent following her husband's sudden death 3 years ago, they had been struggling to maintain stability. Instead, she faced a centuries-old building that showed signs of neglect, with faded exterior panels and a garden that had clearly seen better days. "It looks like something from those historical dramas I love," Hana remarked, her imagination immediately transforming the weathered building into something magical. Since the loss of her father and their subsequent financial hardships, Hana had become increasingly withdrawn, immersing herself in history books and tales of ancient Japan, creating elaborate treasure hunts around their small apartment to escape from their difficult reality. As they sat contemplating the building, an elderly woman in a traditional indigo jacket hurried toward their car, waving with surprising energy. She appeared to be in her mid-70s with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and a face marked with wisdom lines that deepened when she smiled. "You must be Akiko Tanaka's family," she called as Naomi lowered her window. "I'm Yumiko Ito. I've been managing the tea house since your aunt's health declined. I've been wondering when you would arrive." Naomi stepped out into the light drizzle, extending her hand. "I'm Naomi Tanaka, and this is my daughter Hana. I barely knew Aunt Akiko. I think I met her once at a family gathering when I was very young." Yumiko nodded knowingly. Akiko was a mysterious woman, kept to herself mostly. Lived in Mizuho her entire life, yet somehow always seemed like a visitor just passing through. Called herself a keeper of stories, whatever that meant, she laughed. Always writing in those ancient ledgers of hers. "Did she actually make a living with this place?" Naomi asked, gesturing toward the time-worn tea house. "Enough to sustain herself." Called it a historical sanctuary rather than a tea house. Specialized in feudal-era artifacts, had quite a reputation among certain collectors and historians. Yumiko produced a set of antique keys from her pocket. "Shall we go inside?" The interior of the tea house took Naomi's breath away, not with grandeur, but with the sheer volume of history contained within its walls. Unlike the chaotic jumble she had expected, the main room was meticulously organized with glass display cases containing ancient scrolls, pottery fragments, samurai armor pieces, and ceremonial items. The walls were adorned with carefully preserved paintings, maps in protective frames, and shelves holding lacquered boxes with delicate calligraphy labels. "Aunt Akiko lived here?" she asked in surprise, noticing a small living quarters visible through a sliding paper door at the rear. Moved in about 20 years ago after selling her family home, Yumiko confirmed. Said she needed to be with her collection day and night. Electricity works well enough. The plumbing's somewhat temperamental but functional. There's a modest kitchen and bathing area in the living quarters. As Yumiko showed them around, Hana wandered toward a display case containing feudal-era items, a delicately crafted iron fan, what appeared to be a samurai's personal journal, and several ancient coins. "Mom, look at this," she called, her face pressed against the glass. Inside was a small jade pendant carved with an intricate dragon design. "That's from a high-ranking samurai's ceremonial garment." "Your daughter knows her history," Yumiko remarked, clearly impressed. "Akiko would have appreciated that. She always said the younger generation had forgotten where they came from." That evening, they ordered takeout from the village's only restaurant and continued exploring the tea house. Naomi had called her friend in Tokyo to ship some essential belongings, deciding they would stay in the living quarters behind the tea house for at least a few days while determining their next steps. The more she examined her surroundings, the more intrigued she became. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Akiko Tanaka had been meticulously researching what appeared to be a lost samurai clan treasury, valuables that had been hidden during the tumultuous Sengoku period, and somehow never recovered or documented in official histories. "Mom, look at this," Hana said, carefully examining a small wooden box under the desk lamp. "These compartments move when you press them in a certain order. It's like some kind of puzzle box." Naomi watched as her daughter, always clever with puzzles, manipulated the box's panels, aligning different carved symbols with what appeared to be a fixed marker on the lid. "You might be right." Aunt Akiko's notes mentioned something about a box being a key, but not in the conventional sense. Later that night, after Hana had fallen asleep on the small futon, Naomi continued reading through the journals. One entry from 4 years earlier caught her attention. April 17, 2020. Professor Kimura confirmed the carvings on the wooden puzzle box match fragments found in Lord Tadamori's personal items at the Kyoto Historical Institute. This suggests the encoding system was known to the Tadamori clan's inner circle and used for sensitive communications. The Miyamoto collection appears more significant than previously believed. Not simply war funds, but something the clan leaders deemed essential for the future prosperity of their lineage. The warriors who concealed these treasures took their secrets to their graves, with only encoded maps and keys passed down through designated guardian families. The Tanaka family's role has been to protect not just our portion of the map, but the key to its decoding. I've identified 3 other potential guardian families, but approaching them directly poses risks. There are powerful interests who would prefer this history remain buried. Naomi closed the journal, her mind racing. What had she inherited? Was this just the elaborate fantasy of an eccentric old woman? Or had her aunt actually been tracking a genuine historical mystery? And who were these powerful interests she mentioned? The next morning, Yumiko returned as promised, bringing traditional breakfast and freshly brewed tea from her own home down the street. When Naomi cautiously asked about Akiko's research into feudal artifacts, Yumiko's typically cheerful expression grew serious. "So you found her journals?" she said, glancing toward the back room. "I wondered if she'd leave them for you." Akiko was passionate about feudal Japanese history, particularly the measures taken by certain clans to preserve their legacies during times of conflict. Most people thought she was just an enthusiastic amateur historian, but there were occasionally visitors who seemed very interested in her research. "What kind of visitors?" Naomi asked, keeping her voice low as Hana explored the tea house inventory. "Men in expensive suits who didn't introduce themselves properly. About 2 years ago, Two of them offered to buy the tea house and all its contents for well above market value. Akiko refused. Yumiko hesitated. After that, there was a break-in. Nothing obvious was taken, but Akiko installed better security and became even more private about her work. This information sent a chill through Naomi. She hadn't mentioned the hidden compartment or its contents, and now wondered if she should keep them secret, even from Yumiko, who seemed genuinely fond of her aunt. Later that day, while Yumiko minded the tea house, Naomi visited the Mizuho Community Bank to access Akiko's safety deposit box. Inside, she found the property deed, insurance documents, and a sealed envelope containing another key, smaller and more modern than those to the tea house, with a tag labeled Storage Unit 8, Mizuho Cultural Center. The storage unit turned out to be a small climate-controlled space near the village's modest cultural center. Inside were carefully organized filing cabinets and archival boxes, each meticulously labeled with dates and content descriptions. One entire wall was covered with a large corkboard, creating what looked like an investigation board from a detective movie. Photographs of historical documents, maps, and locations were connected by colored strings with handwritten notes attached to each item. At the center was a reproduction of a letter dated May 1583, apparently from Lord Tadamori to his trusted retainer Miyamoto Hiroshi. The clan treasury must be secured from enemy forces. You are hereby authorized to implement the dispersal plan. As discussed, select 7 men of unwavering loyalty, each to secure one portion. The coded maps must remain separate, as must the key. When peace returns to the land, the reunification of these assets will ensure our clan's future prosperity, regardless of political outcomes. Surrounding this central document were photographs of historical sites across several prefectures, many marked with the same strange symbols that appeared on the wooden puzzle box. Pushpins in different colors connected locations, creating what appeared to be multiple possible routes or connections. As Naomi studied the board, she noticed a modern map with several locations circled in red. One circle marked the location of the Tanaka tea house itself. Another highlighted an area about 30 kilometers north in what appeared to be protected forest land near an ancient temple site. Her phone buzzed with a text from Yumiko. Man asking questions about Akiko's research. Says he's from Cultural Preservation Society. Never heard of him before. Thought you should know. Naomi's heart raced as she quickly photographed the investigation board and gathered a few folders, labeled Miyamoto Correspondence and Tadamori Treasury Directive. Whatever her aunt had been researching, others were clearly interested in it, and now they knew she had inherited the tea house. Returning to find Hana helping Yumiko arrange some new inventory, Naomi was introduced to Professor Takashi Kimura from Mizuho University's History Department, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. Your aunt and I collaborated on several research projects, Kimura explained after Yumiko had left for the day. Akiko was convinced she'd found evidence of a hidden Tadamori clan treasury funds and valuables, secreted away during the Warring States period that were never recovered or recorded in official histories. That sounds far-fetched, Naomi said cautiously, not revealing what she'd already discovered. Most hidden treasure stories are, Kimura agreed with a smile. But Akiko had assembled compelling evidence correspondence between Lord Tadamori and his officials, encoded maps that aligned with known historical sites, and family histories of 7 guardian families tasked with protecting different pieces of the puzzle. He glanced around the tea house. Did she leave you her research materials? Before Naomi could answer, the tea house door slid open and a well-dressed man in his 40s entered. He had the polished appearance of someone accustomed to authority, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he surveyed the space. Miss Tanaka, I'm Dr. Kenji Watanabe from the National Cultural Preservation Foundation. He introduced himself, presenting a business card. I've been corresponding with your aunt regarding some historically significant items she claimed to possess. I was hoping we might discuss the possibility of acquiring them for proper preservation in our secure facilities. Something in his manner, perhaps too smooth, too practiced, triggered Naomi's caution. She noticed Professor Kimura stiffened slightly at the introduction. "I'm still inventorying my aunt's collection," she replied noncommittally. "I'm not making any decisions about sales until I understand what I'm dealing with." "Of course," Watanabe smiled. "But I should mention that items of national historical significance sometimes fall under special regulatory frameworks. My organization works closely with government agencies to ensure proper handling of such artifacts. Here's my card. I'll be in the village for several days and would be happy to assist with appraisals." After Watanabe departed, Kimura's professional demeanor gave way to visible concern. "I should warn you, there's no legitimate organization called the National Cultural Preservation Foundation. At least not one recognized by any reputable historical association." "Then who was that?" Naomi asked, glancing toward Hana, who was now examining old pottery fragments behind a display case out of earshot. "I'm not entirely sure," Kimura admitted. "But Akiko mentioned being approached by people claiming government affiliations who seemed extraordinarily interested in her research. She became increasingly cautious in the last few years of her life." The professor hesitated. "If Akiko left you anything unusual, documents, artifacts, research notes, I'd be very careful about who you share that information with." That night, after securing the teahouse and checking that Hana was asleep, Naomi spread the materials from the storage unit across the small desk in the living quarters. The Miyamoto correspondence folder contained photocopies of letters between Miyamoto Hiroshi and several samurai officers discussing the dispersal of assets and security protocols for what they referred to as the legacy treasury. Among the papers was a letter addressed to her, written in Akiko's elegant handwriting. "Dear Naomi, if you're reading this, I've passed on and left you with what may seem like a burden, but is actually a legacy of immense importance. Your grandmother often spoke of your intelligence and integrity, qualities that run strong in the Tanaka bloodline. What appears to be a modest tea house is actually the culmination of 12 generations of our family stewardship. The true value lies not in the merchandise, but in what it protects. The back room contains a floor safe beneath the tatami mat. Combination 158,322. Inside you'll find my personal journals and the beginning of a path I've spent my life following. The Tanaka legacy now falls to you. Choose wisely who to trust. Not all history is recorded in textbooks, and some treasures are meant to remain hidden until the right moment. Your aunt, Akiko. A secret safe? That's amazing." Hana exclaimed, startling Naomi, who hadn't heard her daughter wake up. "It's like a real treasure hunt from my books." The back room was small but immaculately organized, with storage cabinets lining one wall and a low writing desk positioned beneath a window overlooking a small garden. Traditional tatami mats covered the wooden floor. Together, they carefully lifted one tatami mat to reveal an old-fashioned floor safe with a manual dial. Naomi knelt and carefully entered the combination, 158,322. The safe opened with a satisfying click, revealing a stack of bound journals, a small wooden box, and an envelope yellowed with age. "What's in the box?" Hana asked, her voice hushed with excitement. Naomi carefully lifted the wooden box, which was about the size of a hardcover book, intricately carved with a pattern of mountains and what appeared to be a compass design. Inside, nestled in faded silk, lay an unusual puzzle box, a wooden cube about 3 inches across, engraved with concentric patterns and strange markings that resembled neither modern letters nor numbers, but something in between. "It looks ancient," she whispered, carefully lifting it from its silk nest. "There's something else." Hana pointed to a small compartment in the box's lid. Inside was a folded piece of parchment, brittle with age. As Naomi carefully unfolded it, they saw it was a small hand-drawn map, the ink faded to a sepia tone. It showed what appeared to be a mountain range with several locations marked with cryptic symbols that matched some of those on the puzzle box. "Mom, this looks like the mountains north of here," Hana said, her passion for geography evident. "See, this could be Mount Kure, and this valley might be where Mizuho sits before modern development." Naomi picked up the most recent journal from the safe, opening to the first page, March 21st, 2023. "I verified the authenticity of the Miyamoto letter, confirming the wooden puzzle box is indeed the key described in Lord Tatamori's correspondence. The markings align with the survey markers on the original maps, but the location of the primary cache remains elusive. My research suggests the Tatamori clan dispersed their treasury among 7 trusted retainers when enemy capture of their stronghold seemed imminent. The Tanaka family's role as guardians began with Tanaka Ichiro, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, who received one portion of the map. Time grows short. The guardian's responsibility must continue." "Guardian?" Hana asked, leaning against her mother to get a better look at the journal. "Like a treasure guardian?" "I have no idea," Naomi replied, flipping through more entries. "But she mentioned something called the Miyamoto collection, repeatedly, and a clan treasury that's connected to the founding of a powerful dynasty." That evening, they ordered more food from the village restaurant and continued exploring. The journals. Naomi had called her friend in Tokyo to have her pack and ship some essential items, deciding they would stay in the quarters behind the teahouse for at least a few days while figuring out their next steps. The more she read, the more intrigued she became. Akiko Tanaka had been meticulously researching what appeared to be a lost portion of the Tatamori clan treasury, funds and valuables that had been hidden during a turbulent period of Japanese history and somehow never recovered or documented in official histories. "Mom, look at this," Hana said, carefully examining the puzzle box under the desk lamp. "If you turn these panels in certain sequences, different symbols align. It's like some kind of decoder." Naomi watched as her daughter, always clever with puzzles, manipulated the wooden panels, aligning different markings with what appeared to be fixed indicators on the corners. "You might be right." Aunt Akiko's notes mentioned something about the box being a key, but not in the traditional sense. Later that night, after Hana had fallen asleep on the futon, Naomi continued reading through the journals. One entry from 3 years earlier caught her attention. June 12, 2021. Professor Kimura confirmed the markings on the wooden puzzle box match fragments found in Lord Tatamori's personal scribe's effects at the Kyoto Historical Institute. This suggests the coding system was known to Tatamori's inner circle and used for sensitive communications. The Miyamoto collection appears to be more significant than previously believed. Not simply war funds, but something the clan leaders deemed essential for the future prosperity of their lineage and the region they protected. The warriors who hid these caches took their secrets to their graves, with only encoded maps and keys, passed down through designated guardian families. The Tanaka family's role has been to protect not just our portion of the map, but the key to its decoding. I've identified 3 other potential guardian families, but approaching them directly poses risks. There are powerful interests who would prefer this history remain buried. Naomi closed the journal, her mind racing. What had she inherited? Was this just the elaborate fantasy of an eccentric old woman? Or had her aunt actually been tracking a genuine historical mystery? And who were these powerful interests she mentioned? The next morning, Yumiko returned as promised, bringing traditional breakfast and freshly brewed tea from her hometown. The street. When Naomi cautiously asked about Akiko's research into feudal artifacts, Yumiko's typically cheerful expression grew serious. "So, you found her journals," she said, glancing toward the back room. "I wondered if she'd leave them for you." Akiko was passionate about feudal Japanese history, particularly the measures taken by certain clans to preserve their legacies during times of conflict. Most people thought she was just an enthusiastic amateur historian, but there were occasionally visitors who seemed very interested in her research. What kind of visitors? Naomi asked, keeping her voice low as Hana explored the teahouse inventory. Men in expensive suits who didn't introduce themselves properly. About 2 years ago, 2 of them offered to buy the teahouse and all its contents for well above market value. Akiko refused. Yumiko hesitated. After that, there was a break-in. Nothing obvious was taken, but Akiko installed better security and became even more private about her work. This information sent a chill through Naomi. She hadn't mentioned the safe or its contents, and now wondered if she should keep them secret, even from Yumiko, who seemed genuinely fond of her aunt. Later that day, while Yumiko minded the teahouse, Naomi visited the Mizuho Community Bank to access Akiko's safety deposit box. Inside, she found the property deed, insurance documents, and a sealed envelope containing another key, smaller and more modern than those to the teahouse, with a tag labeled Storage Unit 8 Mizuho Cultural Center. The storage unit turned out to be a small climate-controlled space near the village's modest cultural center. Inside were carefully organized filing cabinets and archival boxes, each meticulously labeled with dates and content descriptions. One entire wall was covered with a large corkboard, creating what looked like an investigation board from a detective movie. Photographs of historical documents, maps, and locations connected by colored strings with handwritten notes attached to each item. At the center was a reproduction of a letter dated May 1583, apparently from Lord Tadamori to his trusted retainer Miyamoto Hiroshi. The clan treasury must be secured from enemy forces. You are hereby authorized to implement the dispersal plan. As discussed, select 7 men of unwavering loyalty, each to secure one portion. The coded maps must remain separate, as must the key. When peace returns to the land, the reunification of these assets will ensure our clan's future prosperity, regardless of political outcomes. Surrounding this central document were photographs of historical sites across several prefectures, many marked with the same strange symbols that appeared on the wooden puzzle box. Pushpins in different colors connected locations, creating what appeared to be multiple possible routes or connections. As Naomi studied the board, she noticed a modern map with several locations circled in red. One circle marked the location of the Tanaka teahouse itself. Another highlighted an area about 30 kilometers north in what appeared to be protected forest land near an ancient temple site. Her phone buzzed with a text from Yumiko. Man asking questions about Akiko's research. Says he's from Cultural Preservation Society. Never heard of him before. Thought you should know. Naomi's heart raced as she quickly photographed the investigation board and gathered a few folders, labeled Miyamoto Correspondence and Tadamori Treasury Directive. Whatever her aunt had been researching, others were clearly interested in it, and now they knew she had inherited the teahouse. Returning to find Hana helping Yumiko arrange some new inventory, Naomi was introduced to Professor Takeshi Kimura from Mizuho University's History Department, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. Your aunt and I collaborated on several research projects, Kimura explained after Yumiko had left for the day. Akiko was convinced she'd found evidence of a hidden Tadamori clan treasury funds and valuables, secreted away during the Warring States period that were never recovered or recorded in official histories. That sounds far-fetched, Naomi said cautiously, not revealing what she'd already discovered. Most hidden treasure stories are, Kimura agreed with a smile. But Akiko had assembled compelling evidence correspondence between Lord Tadamori and his officials, encoded maps that aligned with known historical sites, and family histories of 7 guardian families tasked with protecting different pieces of the puzzle. He glanced around the teahouse. Did she leave you her research materials? Before Naomi could answer, the teahouse door slid open and a well-dressed man in his 40s entered. He had the polished appearance of someone accustomed to authority, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he surveyed the space. Ms. Tanaka, I'm Dr. Kenji Watanabe from the National Cultural Preservation Foundation. He introduced himself, presenting a business card. I've been corresponding with your aunt regarding some historically significant items she claimed to possess. I was hoping we might discuss the possibility of acquiring them for proper preservation in our secure facilities. Something in his manner, perhaps too smooth, too practiced, triggered Naomi's caution. She noticed Professor Kimura stiffened slightly at the introduction. I'm still inventorying my aunt's collection, she replied non-committally. I'm not making any decisions about sales until I understand what I'm dealing with. Of course, Watanabe smiled. But I should mention that items of national historical significance sometimes fall under special regulatory frameworks. My organization works closely with government agencies to ensure proper handling of such artifacts. Here's my card. I'll be in the village for several days and would be happy to assist with appraisals. After Watanabe departed, Kimura's professional demeanor gave way to visible concern. I should warn you, there's no legitimate organization called the National Cultural Preservation Foundation, at least not one recognized by any reputable historical association. Then who was that? Naomi asked, glancing toward Hana, who was now examining old pottery fragments behind a display case out of earshot. I'm not entirely sure, Kimura admitted. But Akiko mentioned being approached by people claiming government affiliations who seemed extraordinarily interested in her research. She became increasingly cautious in the last few years of her life. The professor hesitated. If Akiko left you anything unusual, documents, artifacts, research notes, I'd be very careful about who you share that information with. That night, after securing the tea house and checking that Hana was asleep, Naomi spread the materials from the storage unit across the small desk in the living quarters. The Miyamoto correspondence folder contained photocopies of letters between Miyamoto Hiroshi and several samurai officers discussing the dispersal of assets and security protocols for what they referred to as the legacy treasury. Naomi took a deep breath and began to study the materials more thoroughly. One letter from Miyamoto to Tanaka Ichiro, apparently Naomi's ancestor, dated September 1583, was particularly revealing. The portion entrusted to your care represents 1/7 of the whole. The map fragment alone is meaningless without the key and the companion pieces held by our fellow guardians. Your family's commitment to this trust must extend beyond our current conflict, potentially for generations. When Japan stands unified, and the time is deemed appropriate by consensus of the guardian families, these resources shall be reunited for their intended purpose. What exactly had been hidden? And why had it never been recovered after the Warring States period ended? The journal suggested Akiko believed the dispersed treasury included not just gold and artifacts, but significant land deeds, ancient knowledge, and resources that the clan leaders had secured for their descendants' future prosperity. The next morning, Naomi woke to the sound of Hana's excited voice. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, the wooden puzzle box and several printed maps spread around her. "Mom, I figured something out," she exclaimed. "The puzzle box isn't just a decoder. It's a location calculator. See these markings? They're geographical indicators, but based on ancient surveying methods. When you align certain symbols, they point to specific locations." Naomi knelt beside her daughter, amazed at her insight. Hana had always been intelligent, but her enthusiasm for this historical puzzle had ignited a confidence and focus she hadn't seen since before her father's death. "And look," she continued, pointing to a modern map of the area she'd printed from the tea house's computer. "If you adjust for the difference between 16th century and modern geographical measurements, this symbol points directly to a spot near the ancient Kure temple ruins about 30 kilometers from here. It's the same location Antakiko circled on her investigation board. Naomi studied the maps, impressed by her daughter's deduction. You really think there's something there? Something hidden for almost 450 years? Only one way to find out. Hana grinned, her eyes sparkling with excitement. What Naomi couldn't know as she helped her daughter gather hiking supplies for their impromptu expedition was that a black sedan was parked across the street, its occupant photographing the teahouse entrance while speaking quietly into a secure phone. Subject appears to be engaging with the Tanaka research. Surveillance will continue. Authorization requested for recovery team standby. In just 3 days, Naomi Tanaka had gone from unemployed single mother to the inheritor of what might be one of Japan's most significant historical secrets. As she locked the tea house, the wooden puzzle box secure in her backpack, she couldn't possibly imagine how this unexpected inheritance would soon place her and Hana at the center of a mystery reaching back centuries. Mystery that powerful people had been working for generations to control. The morning sun filtered through the ancient cedar trees as they loaded their backpacks into her car, the first real adventure they'd shared in years, bringing a newfound connection between mother and daughter. Yet somewhere in the back of her mind, a warning flickered. If her aunt's research was correct, they weren't just looking for historical artifacts. They were potentially uncovering secrets that had been deliberately kept hidden by some of the most influential figures in Japanese history. As they pulled away from the curb, neither noticed the sedan that waited a discreet interval before following, its driver reporting their movement to persons unknown. The hunt for the feudal treasure had officially begun, setting in motion events that would challenge not just Naomi's understanding of history, but her role within it. Naomi Tanaka, who had always found security in the predictable pages of the book she edited, was about to discover that sometimes the most extraordinary chapters of history and of our own lives remain unwritten until we have the courage to pursue them. The Kure Temple Preservation Area sprawled across 2,000 hectares of protected forest, ancient stone pathways, and rocky mountainside. As Naomi parked at the small visitor center, she felt a strange blend of excitement and apprehension. The rational part of her mind, the careful editor who had always valued facts and verifiable sources, questioned the wisdom of chasing what might be nothing more than an old woman's fantasy. But another part of her, perhaps the same adventurous spirit that had once dreamed of writing historical novels before practicality led her to editing, thrilled at the possibility. According to Hana's calculations, we need to follow the eastern path about 3 kilometers, then head toward the ruins near something called the Warrior's Meditation Stone. Naomi explained to Professor Kimura, who had joined their expedition after expressing concern about their safety. The Warrior's Meditation Stone, Kimura repeated thoughtfully, named after Miyamoto Hiroshi, the same retainer mentioned in your aunt's research. That can't be coincidence. The professor had arrived at the tea house that morning, just as they were preparing to leave, bringing historical maps of the area that predated modern development. When Naomi hesitantly revealed their destination, he had insisted on accompanying them, citing both his familiarity with the preservation area and his concern about Watanabe's suspicious interest. "Mom, look at the visitor map," Hana called, pointing to a large display near the trailhead. The Warrior's Meditation Stone is marked as a historical site. It says there was a samurai outpost there during the Sengoku period. The autumn day was perfect for hiking, cool but sunny, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of cedar and moss as they followed the well-maintained trail. Professor Kimura shared historical context about the area. This mountain was strategically important during the clan wars, he explained. The Tatamori clan established a series of outposts to watch for enemy movements. Local warriors would use signal fires or messenger riders to warn their lord of approaching hostile forces. That makes it a perfect place to hide something valuable, Hana reasoned. Samurai would always be around keeping watch. After about an hour of hiking, they reached a wooden sign marking the side, "Trail to the Warrior's Meditation Stone." The path narrowed as it wound through dense forest before opening to a dramatic overlook, a large flat stone surface rising about 15 meters above the valley floor, providing a commanding view of the surrounding mountains. "I can see why they chose this for an outpost," Naomi remarked, taking in the panoramic vista. "But where would they hide something here?" Hana wondered, her initial excitement giving way to confusion as she surveyed the exposed rock face. Naomi removed the wooden puzzle box from her backpack, studying its markings in the clear daylight. Turning it in her hands, she aligned one particular symbol, what looked like a stylized mountain, with what appeared to be a directional indicator. "Hana, in your calculations, did you account for the seasonal positioning of the sun?" Naomi asked, recalling something from Akiko's notes. "What do you mean?" Hana asked. "Ancient Japanese navigation sometimes used solar positioning that varied by season," Professor Kimura explained. "In the 16th century, landmarks would be aligned with where the sun rose or set at different times of year. Today is near the autumn equinox, which would have special significance." Hana's eyes widened. "I didn't know that. We need to recalculate." Using the professor's knowledge of historical surveys and Hana's quick mathematical mind, they adjusted their coordinates. The new calculation pointed not to the exposed lookout, but to a spot about 40 meters downslope, where a cluster of massive boulders created a natural formation resembling a small grotto. "That's it!" Hana exclaimed, rushing toward the formation. A natural hiding place that wouldn't change over time. The grotto was actually a narrow opening between two enormous boulders, partially obscured by smaller rocks that appeared to have been deliberately positioned. It would be easy to miss if you weren't specifically looking for it. As they approached the formation, Naomi felt a sudden unease. "Wait," she cautioned, pulling Hana back gently. "Let's take a moment to think this through. If there really is something hidden here from feudal times, there might be, I don't know, structural instability or other hazards." Professor Kimura nodded approvingly. "Very wise. Let me take a look first." He moved carefully around the rock formation, examining it from different angles. "The opening appears stable, but it's quite narrow. Hana might be the only one small enough to fit through comfortably." "No way," Naomi said immediately. "I'm not sending my daughter into an unknown space alone." "Mom, I'll be fine," Hana protested. "I can take your phone for light, and you'll be right here." After much deliberation and a thorough examination of the opening, Naomi reluctantly agreed, but only after establishing strict safety protocols. Hana would wear a small backpack with water and a first aid kit, carry both Naomi's phone for its flashlight and her own so they could maintain communication, and would come out immediately if she encountered anything questionable. "Remember, this isn't about finding treasure," Naomi instructed as she helped her prepare. "It's about safely confirming if your theory is correct. No risks. Understood?" "Understood," Hana promised, barely containing her excitement. With Naomi and Professor Kimura watching anxiously, Hana carefully squeezed through the narrow opening. For several tense minutes, they could hear only the shuffling sounds of her movement and the occasional "wow" or "this is so cool. What do you see?" Naomi called, fighting the parental instinct to pull her back out immediately. "It opens up inside," Hana's voice echoed slightly. "It's like a small room. Wait, I see something. There's a stone with markings on it. It looks like it's been carved. Can you take a photo?" "So these documents you mentioned," she said after introductions, "what period are we talking about?" "Late 16th century, Professor Kimura answered. "Potentially of significant historical importance and extremely fragile. We were hoping you might advise on proper handling and perhaps preliminary authentication." May's professional interest was immediately piqued. "Let me get my tools." I have a preservation workspace set up in my home studio for smaller projects. In May's carefully controlled workspace with proper lighting and humidity management, they carefully unwrapped the oilskin package. May's expression transformed from professional interest to astonishment as she examined the contents. "Where did you find these?" she whispered, carefully studying the documents through a magnifying glass. The paper composition, ink formulation, writing style all consistent with late Sengoku period. And that seal, she pointed to the red stamp at the bottom of the main letter. "I've studied Tatamori clan artifacts extensively. This appears authentic at first examination." "Can you help us properly document them?" Naomi asked. "We need secure digital copies before deciding next steps." May nodded slowly. "I can do better than smartphone photos. I have professional scanning equipment that can capture high-resolution images without harmful light exposure." She glanced at them with newfound respect and curiosity. "But you should know if these are what they appear to be. They belong in a major museum or the National Archives." "We agree," Naomi assured her, "but there are complications. Certain people seem very interested in obtaining these documents before they can be properly studied or made public." Understanding dawned in May's eyes. The eternal conflict between knowledge as public good versus tool of power. "I've encountered this before, though usually with imperial artifacts or controversial cultural items." She smiled reassuringly. "Let me guess, men in dark suits claiming some vague governmental authority." "Exactly," Professor Kimura confirmed. "Well, proper documentation is our first defense," May declared, moving toward her equipment. "If these documents exist in secure digital form, their contents can't be easily suppressed, regardless of what happens to the originals." Over the next hour, May meticulously scanned each document, creating multiple high-resolution digital copies stored on separate encrypted drives. She also performed preliminary conservation assessments, noting areas of concern and recommending proper storage conditions. "These need proper archival housing," she explained, carefully returning the documents to their temporary wrappings. "I can prepare appropriate materials, but you'll need to decide where they'll ultimately reside." As May worked, Naomi, Hana, and Professor Kimura compared the newly discovered documents with the materials from Akiko Tanaka's research. The correlation was unmistakable. The symbols on the wooden puzzle box matched markings on the map fragments, and references in Lord Tatamori's letter aligned with entries in Akiko's journals. "It's all real," Hana whispered, awestruck. Aunt Akiko wasn't just imagining things. There really is a hidden feudal treasure. Not gold coins, but something maybe even more valuable. "Land and resource rights," Professor Kimura mused. "Potentially worth billions in today's terms, depending on what territories were included and whether the claims would still be legally valid. But what's our responsibility now?" Naomi wondered aloud. If this truly is what it appears to be, documents that could affect modern resource rights and possibly regional agreements, we can't just turn them over to the first person claiming authority. "Nor can you keep them hidden," May pointed out gently. "If authentic, these belong to the Japanese people, part of our national heritage." "We need legal advice," Kimura suggested. "And perhaps media protection public knowledge is the best defense against quiet appropriation." Naomi's phone buzzed with an incoming text from Yumiko. Men in suits searching the teahouse claiming government authorization didn't let them into living quarters. Call immediately. A cold wave of apprehension washed over her. Events were moving faster than she had anticipated. The mystery that had seemed like an exciting adventure that morning had suddenly become frighteningly real, with tangible consequences. "They're searching the teahouse," she informed the others, showing them the message. "We can't go back there. At least not tonight." "You can stay here," May offered without hesitation. "I have plenty of room, and frankly, I'm now as invested in this mystery as you are." As Naomi texted Yumiko to reassure her they were safe, Professor Kimura paced thoughtfully. We need to be strategic about next steps. These documents suggest the existence of 6 other caches, each held by a different guardian family. Your aunts. Research identified some potential descendants of these families. If we could locate even a few of them, we might piece together more of the puzzle and have stronger standing against whoever Watanabe represents. As evening settled over Kyoto, the 4 unlikely allies gathered around Mei's dining table, spreading out maps, journal entries, and digital scans of the newly discovered documents. The wooden puzzle box, the key that had unlocked the first cache, sat at the center of the table, its mysterious markings catching the light. Hana, despite the tense situation, couldn't contain a smile of pure excitement. You know what this reminds me of, Mom? Those treasure hunt games Dad used to create for us in the apartment. Except this is real history, not just imagination. Naomi reached over to squeeze her daughter's hand, struck by the extraordinary turn their lives had taken. 1 week ago, she had been an unemployed editor facing mounting bills and an uncertain future. Now she sat at the center of what might be one of the most significant historical discoveries of the century. Whatever happens next, she said, looking around at their small group, we have a responsibility to handle this right, not just to honor Aunt Akiko's trust, but because this legacy belongs to history, not to any individual or organization trying to control it. As they worked into the night, piecing together clues from Akiko Tanaka's lifetime of research, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose larger than herself, a connection to both past and future that transcended her immediate struggles. The inheritance that had initially seemed like a burden had become something far more valuable than mere property. It had become a mission. What Naomi couldn't know as she helped map out their strategy for the coming days was that in a secure facility hundreds of kilometers away, the surveillance photos from Mizuho and the preservation area were being analyzed by individuals with resources far beyond what Kenji Watanabe had revealed, individuals whose interest in the Tatamori collection spanned generations and reached to the highest levels of power. The race to uncover Japan's hidden feudal legacy had begun in earnest. For Naomi Tanaka, the greatest challenge would not be finding the remaining caches, but ensuring that when found, they fulfilled their intended purpose, serving the future of a nation rather than the interests of those who would control its past. Dawn broke over Kyoto with soft golden light filtering through the morning mist, giving the ancient capital an ethereal quality that seemed fitting for the extraordinary situation. Naomi woke early, her mind already racing with plans and concerns, before her feet touched the floor. In the guest room across the hall, Hana still slept soundly, the deep, untroubled sleep of youth. Despite the tumultuous events of the previous day, she found Mei already awake in her kitchen, preparing green tea while reviewing the digital scans of the Tatamori documents on her laptop. I couldn't sleep, Mei admitted, sliding a steaming cup toward Naomi. These are simply too fascinating. I've been cross-referencing certain phrases against known Tatamori documents in the National Museum database. The linguistic patterns and references to specific events are consistent with authenticated writings from this period. So they're real, Naomi said softly, the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on her shoulders. I believe so. Mei nodded. And potentially even more significant than we initially thought. She turned the laptop screen toward Naomi, showing a magnified portion of one document. This reference to natural bounties beneath the Eastern Territories could be describing mineral rights in lands that weren't even part of the Tatamori domain in 1583 areas that would later become part of unified Japan during the Tokugawa shogunate. How could Lord Tatamori have rights to territories that weren't his yet? Naomi asked, puzzled. That's what makes this so extraordinary, Mei explained, her conservator's professional reserve giving way to genuine excitement. These documents suggest the Tatamori clan was securing future resources long before the territories were officially acquired, perhaps even making secret arrangements with neighboring clans that never appeared in official records. Professor Kimura joined them, looking remarkably alert despite their late night of research. If authentic, these documents could rewrite portions of Japanese feudal history and potentially impact modern resource rights in significant ways. Which explains why Watanabe and his associates are so interested, Naomi concluded grimly. Her phone chimed with a text from Yumiko. Teahouse clear now. They left after searching for hours. Didn't find whatever they wanted. Safe to meet at my house if needed. 15 Cedar Lane. After a quick breakfast, they gathered around May's dining table to formulate a plan. Professor Kimura had been reviewing Akiko Tanaka's notes on the other potential guardian families. According to your aunt's research, he explained, pointing to entries in one journal, she identified potential descendants of at least 3 other guardian families, the Itos in Nara, the Nakamuras in Hiroshima, and the Satos right here in Kyoto. Did she ever contact them? Naomi asked. She approached the Itos 3 years ago, Kimura confirmed. A Fumiko Ito in Nara. According to her notes, Fumiko confirmed her family had preserved certain historical artifacts related to the Sengoku period, but was reluctant to discuss details. She planned to visit her again, but fell ill shortly after. So our next step is to find Fumiko Ito, Naomi decided, her publisher's instinct for organizing complex projects taking over. But first, we need to retrieve whatever we can from the teahouse and storage unit without alerting Watanabe. They divided responsibilities. May would create proper archival housing for the Tatamori documents and research authentication resources. Professor Kimura would attempt to contact Fumiko Ito discreetly. Naomi and Hana, accompanied by Yumiko for added safety, would retrieve essential items from the teahouse and storage unit. Before departing for Mizuho, Naomi pulled Hana aside. This situation is becoming more serious than I anticipated, she told her gently. I need to know you understand that our safety comes first. If at any point I feel we're in danger, we walk. Away from all of this, the teahouse, the documents, everything. Agreed? Hana nodded solemnly, though Naomi could see the adventure still sparkled in her eyes. But Mom, don't you think we were meant to find this? Aunt Akiko chose you as her heir for a reason. Naomi smiled, touched by her daughter's unwavering faith. Maybe so, but no historical discovery is worth putting you at risk. They met Yumiko at her cozy traditional home a few blocks from the teahouse. The older woman embraced them both warmly, before offering a stern assessment of the previous day's events. 4 men, very official-looking but not local police, she reported. They had some kind of warrant, but I made sure to read it carefully. It only authorized search of the commercial premises, not the private living quarters. I insisted they respect that boundary. Thank you, Yumiko, Naomi said gratefully. Did they say what they were looking for? Documents related to territorial resource allocations. Yumiko quoted precisely. And something called a cipher device. They were particularly interested in anything from the Sengoku period. The wooden puzzle box felt suddenly heavier in Naomi's backpack. Did they take anything? Not that I could tell, Yumiko shook her head. Though they photographed some of Akiko's reference books and maps. They were frustrated not to find whatever they were seeking. With Yumiko keeping watch, they made a quick visit to the teahouse, retrieving essential documents from the living quarters and checking that the floor safe remained undisturbed. Naomi was relieved to find that while the shop had been thoroughly searched, the searchers had either missed or ignored the hidden compartment beneath the tatami where Akiko had stored her most detailed research journals, the cultural center. Storage unit proved more concerning. The lock had been broken and many of the files disturbed. The investigation board had been partially dismantled, though important connections remained visible. They were interrupted, Professor Kimura surmised, noting the haphazard nature of the search, perhaps by center security or other visitors. They quickly gathered the most important materials, particularly those related to the other guardian families, and secured them in Yumiko's car. As they were preparing to leave, Naomi's phone rang an unknown number with a Nara area code. "Naomi Tanaka?" A woman's voice asked when Naomi answered cautiously. "This is Fumiko Ito. Professor Kimura contacted me about your Aunt Akiko's research. I think we need to talk immediately." Within 2 hours, they were seated in Fumiko Ito's elegant traditional home in Nara's historic district. A striking woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and penetrating dark eyes. Fumiko had the poised demeanor of old Japanese nobility, restrained but formidable. "I was sorry to hear of Akiko's passing," she said after introductions were complete. She was one of the few people who understood the significance of what our families have protected. "Then it's true?" Naomi asked. "Your family is one of the guardian families." Fumiko nodded, rising to unlock an antique tansu chest in the corner of her formal living room. From a hidden drawer, she removed a small wooden box remarkably similar to the one that had contained the puzzle box, though with different decorative carvings. Ito Masashi was one of the 7 men chosen by Miyamoto Hiroshi to safeguard portions of what they called the Eternal Legacy Collection, she explained, opening the box to reveal a bronze object that resembled an ancient compass, but with unusual modifications. Like your Tanaka ancestor, he passed the responsibility down through generations, though the full meaning was gradually lost. By my grandfather's time, it was simply a family heirloom with historical importance. Professor Kimura examined the bronze instrument with reverent care. This appears to be a modified surveying compass used for precise geographical measurements. In the 16th century, the modification suggests it was customized for very specific calculations. "It aligns with the wooden puzzle box," Fumiko confirmed. "Or at least that's what your aunt believed when she visited me. The markings on your box correspond to measurement points on this compass. Did you show her your cache location?" Naomi asked. A shadow crossed Fumiko's elegant features. "No, though I intended to eventually." But shortly after her visit, I received inquiries from men claiming to represent historical preservation societies, asking very specific questions about feudal artifacts in my family's possession. Her expression hardened. "My family has been in Nara politics for 5 generations, Miss Tanaka. I recognize government intelligence operatives when I encounter them." "Kenji Watanabe?" Naomi asked. "Among others," Fumiko confirmed. When they became particularly insistent, I used family connections to make inquiries. What I discovered concerned me deeply. These men represent a department that officially doesn't exist, the Historical Security Division. Ostensibly part of the Cultural Affairs Agency, but operating with unusual autonomy and direct ministerial oversight. What exactly are they protecting? Professor Kimura wondered aloud. "Control," Fumiko stated simply. "The documents and maps we've inherited potentially impact resource rights worth billions, possibly trillions in today's economy: mining rights, water rights, land ownership, and strategic locations, all established before modern regulatory frameworks existed." The implications were staggering. If the Tadamori clan had indeed secured these rights through secret arrangements, the legal ramifications would be enormously complex. Who would control these resources today? The national government, prefectural governments, the descendants of the original guardian families? After your aunt's visit, Fumiko continued, I contacted the Nakamura family in Hiroshima. They confirmed they also maintained certain Sengoku period artifacts, including a partial map with markings similar to those on the puzzle box you've described. The guardian families are still out there, Miss Tanaka, though most no longer understand the significance of their inheritance. How many have you located? Professor Kimura asked. 4, including your family, Fumiko replied. And I believe I know the general location of 2 of the caches, though I've never attempted to access them. Why not? Hana asked, speaking up for the first time since their arrival. Fumiko smiled at the girl, her severe expression softening. A fair question, young lady. Partly out of respect for the original intent that the caches should only be opened when all guardian families agreed the time was right. But mostly because I understood that opening one cache alone would likely bring unwanted attention without providing complete information. The collection was deliberately dispersed so that no single portion would be useful without the others. Like a puzzle with the pieces scattered, Hana nodded, understanding immediately. Precisely, Fumiko confirmed. But now circumstances have forced our hand. If Watanabe's division is actively pursuing the caches, we must act quickly to ensure they don't control the narrative or the resources. By evening, their small group had expanded and relocated to the secure conference room of a Nara law firm, where Fumiko's cousin was a senior partner. The room's advanced privacy features, signal blocking, sound insulation, and security monitoring provided a safe environment to develop their strategy. They had been joined by Hiroshi Nakamura, a cultural heritage expert from Hiroshima, whose family had safeguarded their portion of the Tatamori collection for generations. He had brought a lacquered case containing a bronze astronomical instrument, with markings that precisely complemented those on the Tanaka and Ito artifacts. When combined correctly, Hiroshi explained, aligning his instrument with the digital scans of the documents from the Kore Temple cache, these reveal not just locations, but proper sequence. The Tatamori clan created a system requiring the caches to be opened in a specific order, each providing keys or instructions to the next. A security protocol, Professor Kimura realized, ensuring that even if one cache was discovered, the others would remain protected unless the proper sequence was followed. Based on our combined research, Fumiko continued, we believe the next cache is located near Tadaiji Temple in Nara, the Sato family cache. According to historical correspondence, this contains crucial details about the nature and extent of the resource rights. We've made contact with Keiko Sato, though she was initially skeptical. She's agreed to meet us tomorrow. As the others discussed logistics for the Todiji expedition, Naomi stepped away briefly, feeling suddenly overwhelmed by the rapid expansion of what had begun as a simple inheritance. She found a quiet corner of the law office, staring out at the Nara skyline as twilight descended. Hana found her there, approaching with the intuitive understanding that had always existed between them. You okay, Mom? Naomi smiled, putting her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Just processing. A week ago, my biggest worry was making the rent payment. Now we're part of some historical conspiracy involving feudal lords and government agents. It's pretty awesome, Hana grinned, then grew more serious. But I know it's a lot. Are you having second thoughts? Naomi considered the question carefully. Not second thoughts exactly, but I keep wondering why us. Why now? Your great-aunt Akiko spent decades researching this. Why didn't she complete the puzzle herself? Maybe she couldn't, Hana suggested. The journal said the guardian families had to come together willingly. Maybe she never convinced enough of them. Or maybe the timing wasn't right, Naomi mused. Fumiko mentioned that the original instructions specified the caches should only be opened when Japan stands unified and the time is deemed appropriate. And you think that time is now? Hana asked. Naomi looked down at her daughter, struck by her perceptiveness. I don't know. But I do know that if people like Watanabe gain exclusive control of this knowledge, the decision won't be made. For the right reasons. Rejoining the group, Naomi found them reviewing security measures for the Todiji expedition. Fumiko's connections had proven valuable. Her cousin had arranged for private security professionals to accompany them, and Hiroshi Nakamura had engaged a documentary filmmaker friend to record their discoveries, creating a public record that would be difficult to suppress. We should also prepare for media involvement, Fumiko was saying as Naomi returned. Not immediately, but a carefully prepared press strategy for when the time is right. My family has relationships with several respected journalists who understand the concept of responsible reporting on sensitive discoveries. What about Watanabe and his people? Naomi asked. They're clearly monitoring the teahouse and probably watching all of us by now. My security team is handling counter-surveillance, Fumiko's cousin assured her. And we've prepared legal countermeasures should they attempt to interfere directly. A prefectural judge who owes my aunt a favor has signed standby orders protecting these artifacts as private historical property, pending proper authentication and review. The methodical professionalism was reassuring, yet Naomi couldn't help feeling they were accelerating towards something whose full implications none of them truly understood. These resources, whatever they might be, had been hidden for nearly 450 years. Revealing them now would inevitably change things, perhaps dramatically. Before we proceed further, she said, drawing everyone's attention, I think we need to discuss what happens if we succeed. If we locate all the caches and piece together the complete Tatamori collection, what then? Who decides how these resources are used? The question created a momentary silence as each person considered its implications. The Tatamori clan's instructions were clear. Hiroshi Nakamura finally responded. These resources were preserved for the benefit of generations yet unborn, to be administered with wisdom and foresight, rather than immediate advantage, which could be interpreted in many ways by modern standards. A valid concern, Fumiko acknowledged, which is why I propose that our goal should not be to claim control of these resources, but to ensure their discovery becomes part of the public record, transparent, accountable, and subject to modern democratic processes. She looked around the table. We are not seeking to become wealthy or powerful through this discovery. We are simply fulfilling our family's obligation to bring this legacy into the light at the appropriate time. The sentiment resonated with Naomi. This wasn't about personal gain. It was about honoring a trust that spanned generations and ensuring that whatever the Tatamori clan had preserved would benefit the nation they had envisioned as it had evolved over centuries. That night in the hotel suite Fumiko had arranged for them, Naomi found herself unable to sleep despite the luxurious accommodations. She sat by the window watching the lights of Nara while Hana slept peacefully in the adjacent room. Her phone chimed softly with a text from Yumiko. Strangers watching the teahouse again. Different men this time. More professional. Be careful. The warning heightened Naomi's sense that they were racing against unseen forces with far greater resources. Yet something else nagged at her. A detail from Aunt Akiko's journals that seemed significant but remained elusive in her memory. Opening her laptop, she reviewed the digital copies of her aunt's most recent entries. There, in an entry from just 1 month before her death, she found what had been troubling her. The wooden puzzle box is not merely a key to locations. It contains a message in itself. The specific arrangement of symbols, when properly interpreted, conveys the Tatamori clan's true intent for the Eternal Legacy Collection. This was their failsafe, ensuring that even if all written instructions were lost or altered, the unadulterated purpose would remain literally in the hands of the guardian. Families. Naomi retrieved the wooden puzzle box from its secure pouch, studying it with renewed intensity. What message had been encoded in its intricate markings? And why had Aunt Akiko considered this understanding so crucial? As dawn approached, she finally dozed off in the comfortable armchair, the puzzle box still clutched in her hand. Her dreams were vivid images of samurai lords and retainers discussing plans over candle-lit maps, warriors hiding document caches in remote locations, and generations of Tanaka ancestors guarding a legacy they only partially understood. She woke to Hana gently shaking her shoulder, the morning sun streaming through the hotel windows. "Mom, everyone's gathering for breakfast before we head to Tadigi," she said. then noticed the puzzle box in her hand. "Were you studying that all night?" "Not all night," she smiled, stretching to ease her stiff neck. "But I think there's something we're missing, something important about the box itself." Over breakfast in a private dining room, Naomi shared her realization with the group. Hiroshi Nakamura was particularly intrigued. "Your aunt may have been right," he agreed, examining the box carefully. "These markings, they're not just coordinates. Some appear to be ideographic symbols from a 16th century cryptographic system used by the Tatamori clan for confidential communications. Can you decode it?" Fumiko asked. "Not completely," Hiroshi admitted. "The system was personalized by each clan, but combined with the Ito compass and my family's astronomical device, we might be able to extract at least partial meaning." Their combined expertise, Hiroshi's knowledge of historical cryptography, Fumiko's understanding of 16th century surveying techniques, and Professor Kimura's background in feudal communications, gradually revealed a pattern. The puzzle box contained a message encoded through multiple layers of security that would have been nearly impossible to crack without the complementary knowledge held by separate guardian families. "It's a statement of principles," Hiroshi translated slowly, working through the symbols. "A set of guidelines for how the Eternal Legacy Collection should be administered when recovered." As the message emerged piece by piece, its significance became clear. The Tatamori clan had indeed secured valuable resource rights, but with specific limitations and ethical frameworks for their use, considerations that were remarkably forward-thinking for their era, including provisions for conservation, sustainable management, and equitable distribution of benefits. They weren't just thinking about immediate clan interests, Professor Kimura marveled. They were establishing long-term stewardship principles that in some ways anticipate modern environmental and social concerns. "Which explains the elaborate security measures," Fumiko nodded. "These weren't just economic assets, they represented a vision for responsible resource management that might have been corrupted or exploited if controlled by the wrong interests." As they prepared to depart for Todaiji and the Sato cache, Naomi felt a renewed sense of purpose. What had begun as an unexpected inheritance had evolved into something far more meaningful, a chance to fulfill a sacred trust established during Japan's tumultuous past and preserved through generations of ordinary citizens who understood that some legacies transcend personal benefit. The Eternal Legacy Collection was not just a historical treasure or economic windfall. It was a vision of responsible stewardship that had waited nearly 450 years for the right moment to emerge. And somehow, through circumstances she could never have anticipated, Naomi Tanaka, single mother, unemployed editor, and reluctant heir, had become instrumental in bringing that vision to light. What she couldn't know as their convoy departed for Todaiji under the protection of Fumiko's security team was that they were being observed by individuals representing interests far beyond Kenji Watanabe's historical security division, powerful entities who had maintained their own awareness of the Tatamori collection through generations and who had very different ideas about how these resources should be controlled. The quiet race to recover Japan's feudal legacy was about to become considerably less quiet. For Naomi and Hana, the greatest challenges and revelations still lay ahead. Todaiji Temple stood as a testament to Japan's ancient grandeur, its massive wooden structures and iconic Great Buddha drawing tourists from around the world. As Naomi and their group approached the Eastern Gardens, less frequented by casual visitors, she felt a profound sense of historical continuity. Here they were, following clues laid down nearly half a millennium ago, walking paths that countless generations had tread before them. Keiko Sato met them near a small pavilion overlooking a koi pond. In her 50s, with an elegant bearing and shrewd eyes that missed nothing, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to managing substantial responsibilities. "My grandmother told stories of our family's role as guardians," she explained as they walked toward a less traveled section of the temple grounds. I always thought they were just family legends until Fumiko contacted me. Then I remembered this. From her handbag, she produced a small jade pendant carved with symbols that matched certain markings on the wooden puzzle box. It's been passed down through the female line of our family for generations. We were told never to sell it, regardless of circumstances. Hiroshi examined the pendant with expert eyes. This is remarkable craftsmanship, likely from the same artisan who created elements of the puzzle box. The symbolism suggests it's a directional key. By combining the wooden puzzle box with the Ito compass, the Nakamura astronomical device, and now the Sato pendant, they were able to triangulate a specific location within the temple grounds, a small stone garden tucked behind an administrative building, seldom visited by tourists. The records say this area was once part of a samurai residence connected to the temple, Keiko explained as they approached the garden. The buildings were destroyed in fires centuries ago, but certain stone elements remained untouched. The garden appeared unremarkable at first glance, a carefully arranged collection of stones and carefully pruned shrubs. But as they applied the measurements derived from their combined artifacts, a pattern emerged. 7 stones arranged in a specific configuration that matched symbols on the wooden puzzle box. "This is it," Hana whispered excitedly. "The stones are positioned to match the constellation pattern on the puzzle box." Professor Kimura nodded approvingly. Astronomically significant positions that would remain constant over centuries, a brilliant security measure. Even if the garden was disturbed, anyone with the proper key would know how to identify the correct configuration. With Keiko's permission as the property's custodian, they carefully examined the stone arrangement. One stone slightly different in coloration from the others contained a small depression that wasn't immediately visible but perfectly matched the dimensions of the Sato pendant. When Keiko placed the pendant into the depression and rotated it following the pattern indicated by the wooden puzzle box, they heard a faint click. The stone, which had appeared immovable, shifted slightly to reveal a narrow opening beneath. "Incredible," Fumiko breathed. "The mechanism has survived all these centuries." Inside the hidden compartment, protected by an ingenious design that had kept out moisture and pests, they found a lacquered document case sealed with wax bearing the Tatamori clan crest. With proper conservation tools provided by Mei, they carefully extracted and opened the case. Inside lay a detailed map of territories spanning much of what was now Western Japan, with specific sites marked using the same cryptographic system they had begun to decode. Accompanying the map was a document listing specific resource rights mining locations, forest preserves, water sources, and medicinal plant habitats, all with detailed sustainability provisions centuries ahead of their time. "This is extraordinary," Professor Kimura said, his voice hushed with academic reverence. "This document establishes what amounts to an early conservation system designed to ensure resources would be available for future generations." As Mei carefully photographed and documented each item, Naomi noticed Hana studying the map with intense concentration. "Mom, look at this," she said, pointing to a symbol repeated at several locations. "This matches a marking on Aunt Akiko's investigation board, something she labeled sacred trust sites. And see how these 7 symbols form a pattern. I think they're showing the locations of all 7 caches." Naomi marveled at her daughter's perceptiveness. In just days, Hana had transformed from a withdrawn, grief-shadowed child into a confident young historian, her natural intelligence finding purpose in unraveling this centuries-old mystery. Their examination was interrupted by the discreet buzz of Fumiko's phone. Her expression darkened as she read the message. "Our security team reports government vehicles approaching the temple grounds," she informed them quietly. "At least 6 men, including Watanabe. They're moving with purpose." "How did they find us?" Naomi asked, alarm rising in her chest. Perhaps they've been tracking us all along, Professor Kimura suggested. Or someone in one of our organizations leaked information. Regardless, we need to secure these findings and leave, Fumiko decided. Keiko, is there another way out? Of the temple grounds? Keiko nodded. A service entrance on the western side, used by staff. My car is parked nearby. As Mei finished her documentation and carefully repackaged the Sato cache materials, Fumiko's security team implemented their contingency plan. 2 members created a diversion near the main temple complex, while the others escorted their group toward the western exit. They were halfway there when Naomi spotted Watanabe and 2 men in dark suits moving purposefully through a garden pathway that would intersect with their route. Without hesitation, she guided Hana behind a large stone lantern, motioning the others to pause. They haven't seen us yet, she whispered, but they're blocking our path to the exit. Fumiko assessed the situation with calm efficiency. We'll split up. Naomi, you and Hana go with Keiko through the service exit. The rest of us will draw their attention in another direction. We'll reconvene at the secondary location we discussed. Before Naomi could protest, Professor Kimura pressed a small external drive into her hand. The complete digital archive of everything we've documented so far, he explained. Just in case we're separated longer than planned. With heart pounding, Naomi led Hana alongside Keiko through a narrow passage between administrative buildings. Behind them, they could hear Fumiko's voice raised in apparent dispute with Watanabe, a perfectly timed distraction. Keiko's car, a modest sedan that attracted no attention, was parked in a small lot used by temple staff. As they pulled away, Naomi caught a glimpse of Watanabe's face in her side mirror, his expression tight with frustration as he scanned the grounds, clearly aware that someone had slipped his net. Where are we going? Hana asked, clutching her backpack that now contained the wooden puzzle box and digital copies of their discoveries. My family owns a small vacation home in the mountains near Mount Yoshino, Keiko explained as she navigated the narrow streets of Nara. It's remote, difficult to find without specific directions, and has no digital footprint. We'll be safe there while we wait for the others. As they drove through the beautiful countryside, autumn colors painting the landscape in vibrant hues, Naomi felt a complex mix of emotions: fear for their safety, concern for their separated allies, but also a growing sense of destiny. What had begun as an unexpected inheritance was clearly part of something much larger, a historical trust that had waited centuries for the right moment to resurface. Keiko's small vacation home turned out to be a traditional mountain retreat. Modest in size but exquisitely maintained, with sweeping views of forested valleys. Solar panels and satellite communications had been discreetly integrated into the traditional architecture, providing modern conveniences without sacrificing aesthetic harmony. My family has owned this property for generations, Keiko explained, as she prepared tea in the simple kitchen. Few people know of its existence, and those who do respect our privacy. We should be secure here. As evening approached with no word from Fumiko or the others, Naomi's anxiety grew. Hana, sensing her mother's concern, suggested they continue analyzing the materials they had gathered. We can't just sit and worry, she reasoned with wisdom beyond her years. Let's keep working on the puzzle. Maybe we'll discover something. That helps everyone. Naomi smiled at her daughter's resilience. You're right. Let's see what we can learn from the Sato cache documents. Using Keiko's dining table, they spread out copies of the maps and documents, comparing them with the digital archives of their previous discoveries. The wooden puzzle box sat at the center, its intricate markings now taking on new significance. As they understood more of the coding system, I think I see a pattern, Hana said after an hour of concentrated study. Each cache seems to contain information that becomes fully meaningful only when combined with specific information from other caches. It's like they created a system where no single person or family could access the full power of the collection without cooperation from the others. A built-in requirement for consensus, Naomi nodded, impressed. They designed it so the resources couldn't be exploited without multiple guardian families agreeing. And look at this, Hana continued, pointing to a recurring phrase in the Sato documents. This term appears in both the Kure temple documents and here, but slightly modified. I think it's referring to what they called the heart of the legacy, apparently. The most important cache of all. Keiko, who had been observing their work while preparing a simple dinner, joined them at the table. According to my family's oral history, the 7 caches were arranged like the petals of a cherry blossom, with the central cache, the 7th, containing the master key that would unite all the others. And your family's records don't indicate where this central cache might be, Naomi asked. Keiko shook her head. Only that it would be revealed when the first 6 were properly understood. A final safeguard against premature discovery. As night fell over the mountains, Naomi's phone finally chimed with an encrypted message from Professor Kimura. All safe. Temporarily separated. Watanabe's team detained by temple security for unauthorized access to restricted areas. Will contact. When secure, trust the legacy. Relief washed over her. Their friends were safe, at least for now. But Watanabe's aggressive pursuit confirmed what they had suspected. Powerful interests were determined to control the Tatamori legacy before its contents became public knowledge. We should rest, Keiko suggested. Tomorrow we can continue our analysis and plan our next steps. That night, as Hana slept peacefully in the adjoining room, Naomi sat on the veranda overlooking the moonlit valley. The wooden puzzle box rested in her hands, its mysteries partially revealed but still holding secrets. As she turned it slowly, allowing moonlight to play across its carved surface, certain patterns seemed to shift and change with the angle. An optical illusion created by the master craftsman who had designed it. Or was it an illusion? Following an intuition, she aligned the box precisely with the moonlight, and gasped softly as previously invisible markings appeared, faint lines, burned into the wood using a technique that made them visible only under specific lighting conditions. Quickly retrieving her phone, she photographed the newly revealed markings from multiple angles before they faded again as clouds passed over the moon. Examining the images, she recognized elements of the same cryptographic system they had been decoding, but arranged in a new pattern. Unable to contain her excitement, she gently woke Hana, showing her the discovery. "Mom, this is amazing," Hana whispered, instantly alert despite the late hour. "I think these are celestial coordinate star positions that would only align on specific dates." The Tatamori clan was using astronomical knowledge as part of their security system. With growing excitement, they woke Keiko, who confirmed Hana's interpretation. "There's an ancient tradition of using celestial alignments for important events," she explained. "If these markings indicate what I think they do, they're showing a specific astronomical alignment that occurs only once every 60 years. When is the next alignment?" Naomi asked, a tingling sensation of anticipation running down her spine. Keiko's eyes widened as she consulted an astronomical calendar on her tablet. "If these calculations are correct, 3 nights from now." The realization hit them simultaneously. They had discovered not just another clue, but potentially a time-sensitive key to the central cache. Whatever the Tatamori clan had hidden at the heart of their legacy, it might be accessible only during this rare celestial alignment. "We need to figure out the location," Hana said, turning back to the maps with renewed determination. "The star positions must correspond to geographical coordinates." As they worked through the night, piecing together elements from all their discoveries, a location gradually emerged: a remote mountainside shrine near the ancient borders of Tatamori territory, precisely where the 6 petals of their metaphorical cherry blossom converged. By dawn, they had formulated a theory. The central cache could only be accessed when both the physical keys from the other caches were combined, and the celestial alignment occurred. They had 3 days to reunite with their separated allies, gather the remaining artifacts, and reach the remote shrine, all while evading Watanabe and whoever else might be pursuing them. As sunrise painted the mountains in golden light, Naomi stepped onto the veranda for a moment of quiet reflection. The path ahead was uncertain and potentially dangerous, yet she felt a strange calm. In just 1 week, her life had transformed. From a struggle for basic financial survival to being the custodian of a historical legacy of profound importance. She thought of her late husband, who had always encouraged her to believe in possibilities beyond the practical. "Sometimes life's greatest adventures find us when we least expect them," he had often said. Now standing at the convergence of past and future, she felt his presence and his approval. When she returned inside, she found Hana carefully studying the wooden puzzle box, her young face alight with intelligence and purpose. "Mom," she said, looking up with bright eyes, "I think I understand now why Aunt Akiko chose you." The journal said the guardian had to be someone who valued both preservation and progress, someone who could honor the past while creating a better future. "That's exactly who you are." Naomi felt a surge of emotion at her daughter's words. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just for themselves, but for a legacy that spanned centuries and a vision that might help shape centuries to come. "Then let's make sure we're worthy of that trust," she said, embracing Hana with fierce protectiveness and pride. "We have a legacy to fulfill." As morning light filled the mountain retreat, they began preparations for what would surely be the most extraordinary journey of their lives, a race against time, powerful adversaries, and the very movements of the stars themselves. The final chapter of the Tadamori legacy was about to be written, with Naomi and Hana Tanaka playing pivotal roles in a story centuries in the making. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.